All right. Hope you found the workshops enlightening and fun. So we're back for the kind of the, what would you say, the bottom half, the top half of the day. I've got the best half, right? So we've got our very own Denise Cox, who has been with Populo for quite some time. She's a content and communication specialist. I think of her as a IC evangelist extraordinaire. And what was the name of your book?
It's kind of a funny story.
It's a kind of fun, and if you have time to come join us for drinks afterwards, she'll reveal some of her chapters, I'm sure.
I do free first chapter.
Free first chapter, all right. But right now Denise is going to welcome up two of our customers who are going to share some of their successes and stories. So
yeah, Mike,
over
Josh,
to you.
if you could come up. As they're coming up, I hope that you like this kind of new look with the sofa and the chair. I think it's
I love the IKEA couch kind of thing going on.
David
I
Grossman,
hope nobody had to put that together. That's a nightmare.
it's kind of like coffee talk. So we could do that.
Linda Richmond.
Or Wayne and Garth, I was thinking also.
Which
so
one would I be?
I don't know. Good question.
We are going to do this. I just want to put a footnote. Mike Goonan, Josh Chapman, I'm going to let them introduce themselves. But Mike might have to rush off at the very end.
Yep.
It isn't me, it isn't you, so it's a plane to catch.
It's traffic in Chicago, unfortunately, so I apologize. But thank you.
I just want to say we're listening to customer stories, and I think they're just amazing. And I was thinking, what is it? We're so hungry for survey results, for benchmarks, for case studies. What's working? And I realized that we all are kind of working in isolation, and we actually are sharing a lot of the same challenges. So I kind of been talking to, and actually Stephanie was supposed to be here today, and she fell ill, and she apologizes. One of her stories was moving from 5 licenses to 50. And it's a really interesting journey, and she promises to do a case study with me. So I'll share that when that's done. But I realize that we really need to hear what other people are doing, and you're going to really enjoy these stories here. So Mike, first going to introduce yourself, kind of set the stage for your organization, the structure of the organization.
Yeah, sure. Mike Goonan, I'm with Sealed Air. My wife always tells me just lead with bubble wrap. They know what that means when we meet friends. So I work for a company that makes bubble wrap. We also make cryovac materials, which is more in the food safety sector. So we're an organization that's going through a lot of change right now. Actually, we just spun off and sold a portion of our business, which was our diversity care area, which does more of the hygiene solution business for us. So that actually just happened last week. I was actually just talking with Jeff and Andrew about that a little bit ago. But yeah, so that's behind us. So we're focusing and recalibrating our focuses on communications and not just a big project. But nonetheless, that did decrease our number of headcount roughly from 22,000 to around 15,000. So significant drop, but it's gonna, it'll go back up, I'm sure, at some point, depending on what our future plans are as an organization. So we are in the manufacturing field. We do a lot of that piece with the product care side, which is more of our bubble wrap, and our food care division, which is our cryovac side, just as for familiarity in terms of our products. So been in the organization for about 2 years. Have a background at UPS and some retail with companies like Food Lion and Family Dollar. So.
And Josh?
And I'm Josh Chapman with Charter Communications. I've been there for 11 years now in a lot of different roles. Currently, I run all the technology for internal communications, so I'm probably one of the only non-communicators here. But we have 92,000 employees across 41 states in the US and a lot of different communication needs.
And what's the structure with IC there versus where it fits in with the different departments?
Sure, yeah. It's interesting. This is the first organization I've worked for where it's a widespread, a bigger net, if you will, of communications. For example, our divisions have their own teams of communicators, and then we have our core communications and corp comms function that has a team of 3 internal comms people, the team that I'm on. We also have an external communications function, but it's interesting because we do more of a support structure for the different divisions. We don't do all of their direct communications. We do more consulting for them and helping them by driving the channels, managing the channels, pieces like that. So we do support the functions a lot, so HR, finance, IT. I know we're talking about that quite a bit here today. So that's common for us as well, but we focus more on that and more of the strategy side of communications while the divisions do more of the tactical side.
And what about the reporting structure? How does that work?
Yeah, so we report through the VP of Corporate Communications, but he has, under his umbrella, he has communications and sustainability, so that, and also CSR, community relations side. So we have the internal comm side, we have the external comm side, we have the sustainability piece all rolling up under our VP.
Josh?
Yep. And actually very similar. We have, for our department directly in internal comms, we have 4 people on the team. But each individual region, each individual business unit has communication professionals that sit within them, and we do a lot more consulting type roles, and then executive communications come out of our department, and then the same type of structure. We roll up to the corporate communications team that has responsibility for internal, external, PR, government relations, and corporate responsibility.
I missed, did you say that the IC and the EC is combined, or is that separate?
It's, no, it's actually combined, and we work under the same umbrella. We have our own, functions, but we are on the same team.
Yeah, same.
Yep.
Same.
Yep.
All right, we had talked about some of the unique aspects of what you're doing, and with you, Mike, I see within your organizations in a very enviable position in that you're being viewed as strategic leaders with the senior leaders, which is something that is aspirational. So if you could just take us through that, what was it before? How did you achieve that? And what does that look like day to day?
It's definitely a work in progress, and it's still evolving. But yeah, I think if you look back 2-3 years, we went from 1 person doing internal comms, and now we have a larger team. We went from 5, now we're at 3. But it's the overall climate there. It's perfect it's ripe for corp comms. It's something that's being valued there at Sealed Air. So I think we've gotten to the point where we've gotten our senior leaders on board to understand what the process and the need for the function of communications is, and they look at us as a resource, as someone as experts. And I know we talked about that earlier in the last panel. Just hearing you referred to as experts is something I think you should always strive for. I think that is something that is becoming part of the vocabulary. So that's something that has started to take place. We're looped in at the right time a little bit earlier than last minute, like we tend to be as communicators, which is very frustrating. But I think that's something that you have to work towards. It's something you need to use analytics. And we were just talking with Mossy a minute ago. It's great to be able to show how a project does at the end to the client and stakeholder and say, hey, this worked well, this didn't work well. And be able to show that, and Populo has some of these tools using that. I've used that to my advantage, quite frankly. Not only to show the benefit, but also, we know what we're talking about. We know these channels. We know who the audience is, the most effective way to use these channels to hit this audience. So they start to, without us saying it, start to rely on us as the experts in that field.
So you talk about when you bringing in when the change, when the strategy is being planned. It sounds like it's very similar to Health South, what was happening there.
Very similar. It was funny listening to Health South. It's like, wow, that sounds, everything was like a spitting image to how things have evolved at Sealer, which is a good story. I like hearing that. I like hearing that that's happening in other places. So yeah, being more of that strategic partner, it seems to be an evolution if done right in certain organizations for internal communications. I think if you look at 10 years ago, it was just, hey, whoever is, can write decently, you're going to send out an org announcement. You're going to post this to God knows what intranet we have, or if we even have one, maybe SharePoint or something. But that's kind of the extent of how. But now you fast forward 10 years, where we are now, it's changed significantly.
And if one of the things here is if you're going to give advice to people here listening and saying, I want to be Mike. I want to be on Mike's team. How is that? What does that look like in a couple of pieces of advice of how you get to that top table?
Yep. First, you would plan a flight a little bit later so you can attend the whole conference. It's the first thing that you would do. Um, no, but I mean, honestly, for internal communications, it's make sure it starts with the leader. I mean, I've worked with organizations. You've heard the old adage, you don't leave a company, you leave your boss. I mean, it's so true. I think if you have a leader that values communications from the CEO down, I think look for those companies, go to those companies, stick with those companies and grow there. I think that's the first point. I think two, though, is build a team that has common values but also have different skill set. We have people that are great designers in-house. We have people that can do a great external piece or can help us with some of the digital signage aspects that we don't have the skill set. We know what we want to do with it, but we don't know how to do it. So surround yourself with those types of folks, and it helps you broaden your reach, your net, and also be able to tell that story and say, hey, this is what we're doing. This is how we're driving value to the organization. And you'd be amazed at how it starts to open up the eyes of people higher up that can make these decisions in terms of headcount, in terms of resources, and buying networks and opportunities like Populo or different type of structures that you can put in place.
So thinking about becoming strategic leaders, now moving to this unique position that I said to you about being an IT person in IC structure.
Yeah.
So you are IT, you sit within the IC team. This is the optimum scenario in today's technology-driven world, but not yet common within organizational structures. Could you explain how this evolved at your organization?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. So prior to coming to the team, I was running our social media department. And we had one person for the entire company for internal comms, and really no intranet, no anything, and started having a conversation with the head of communications at the time, and decided that we really needed to change that and engage our employees the same way that we engage our customers. So through that, and my boss at the time kind of nudged me to take on the role, which was nice. I moved over onto the internal comms team, and I say team, there were then two of us. But really my role was to stand up an intranet and start building out a platform for our employees to get their information, to engage with each other, to engage back with us. It was a success, thankfully, because I still have a job. But then from there, really, I think we've just evolved the position over time to take on more and more technology and bring in more platforms, more ways to communicate with our employees, bring in things like Popular, bring in video platforms and video chat platforms so that we can actually have interactive chats with our employees, things like that. So it's continuing to evolve, and I think it hopefully will continue to grow.
You were telling me about interesting, where you tackled a lot of, there was the acquisitions, I think the big changeover.
Yeah.
If you could just set that, because it's a scary, exciting story of what you took on.
Yeah, so we're about a year now post a massive acquisition where we went from 25,000 employees to almost 100,000 now, all in one fell swoop. 3 companies merged together. And the big challenge we had was bringing everybody together as one company. And really, we wanted to do that on day one. The day that we merged, we wanted everybody to have access to the exact same information on the same platforms, not this segmented by 3 different companies. It was a very unique challenge. Having to try and coordinate between 3 different companies that weren't yet under one set of leadership, working with 3 different IT departments, working with all the networking components, and getting sign off and buy-in from 3 different CEOs and leadership structures. It was a lot of work, but we actually pulled it off. So the day that the deal went through, we were able to have all 3 companies sign in to our intranet, to the one platform, utilizing all the same tools and getting the same information.
And what would you put that success down to, besides just you? No.
Lots of collaboration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Definitely,
to do
definitely
that
not just
all at
me.
once.
Honestly, it was just a team effort. It was a lot of work, a lot of conference calls, a lot of traveling back and forth to get everybody on board. And
But you said you
we built a huge campaign around
Yeah.
it. Really is starting about a month prior, and so we worked through all the 3 different comms teams worked together to release information and build this every week campaign, little snippets putting out there, getting the CEOs on board to actually all 3 of them come together, produce videos, send out the same information to all 3 companies. Obviously, we couldn't push it out from us to the other 2 because we weren't a combined company yet. So it was a lot of collaboration, a lot of build-up, and getting that excitement in the employees and the anticipation so that on the day of we could send out the information, and ended up with a 98% success rate.
3 CEOs in one video, it's hard enough to get one
I know.
on the calendar.
And we ended up doing 5 videos.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what's the secret with the CEO thing?
Tell them that we had to. That was literally that was how that went down. We just said, look, we've got to make this work, and we need your help.
So the takeaway on that is, if there's acquisitions is the order of the day for
Right.
a lot of companies now.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you gave a couple of tips to people here on what you found worked, would it be the CEO, or there's some others?
I would say that getting the buy-in from the CEO up front, that this needed to happen, that we needed to be united, and really impressing upon them that we need their assistance to make that happen. There was no way that we could have done that if we didn't have their support, their buy-in, their leadership to all the teams saying, yes, let's make this work. And I think the second thing was really just building that anticipation.
Looking at a couple of tactics that you guys have done, Mike, I want to mention a couple here, is dealing with you've tackled reducing comms at your organization. Can you give us a couple of tips on how you achieve that? There was a particular thing there that you did with the calendar.
Yeah. No, a couple of things. So what's interesting with our organization is our function, the Corp Comms team, will communicate to the broader audience, all employees, but we also have 2 functions that tend to do the same. It's kind of started before I came in, which I don't necessarily disagree with, depending on the content. Some of it I think it shouldn't happen. But we do have some IT content and we have some HR content, obviously. So HR clearly would be one of those. But we were starting to find that we would have situations where emails would go out to the larger audience from all 3 at the same day, and that's not effective. You're going to have people getting all these different messages. I think just your chance of oversaturation. I do agree that it's not only just the email, it's also the message, but I think there is something to be said about when you're in the manufacturing side of business and you have a lot of non-wired employees, they're not in front of the computer a lot, you want to limit how much they get. So one thing we did was we created a shared kind of a calendar. We use Google Docs, so we just made a simple Excel sheet that we open up permissions for our IT comms team, us, and then when we meet with HR regularly, we talk about what kind of communications do you need going out to the broader audience in the next week or 2. And we try to get on the calendar, and it's very simply so we can say, hey, Thursday's not a good day, we're sending something out that day, or IT is, et cetera. What about this date? It gives us a little more of that leverage to be more of a thoughtful partner instead of just, yeah, you want it to go on Thursday, fine. We're not going to be button pushers either. So it's a very small tactic, but it actually is proven to be very successful for us because we're able just to manage that. And I like to keep things as simple as possible, and I think that's one of the ways that we did that. And it's very easy to get buy-in from the other partners, so they're not doing extra work. It's just, hey, could you just monitor this? It's free. Get them to buy in, understand what's in it for them and all that. You got to sell them on it a little bit. But I think at the end of the day, that was very helpful for us.
Well, I think it matches what we're hearing from other customers is you have either have measurements that you're showing them or showing them what doesn't work, or a formalized process, or a system where they say they have the respect and they say, yes, That's right. Also, you found an innovative way to communicate with your multilingual force.
Yeah, so we're a global organization. It's a very interesting story. I'll be real brief, not only because I have to catch a flight, but because it's a long story. But frankly, we have a lot of different employees that English is not their first language, and we understand and empathize with that. The problem is we don't have the resources to translate all the content, and plus it's hard to create a matrix that says this should be translated and this content should not. I mean, that's kind of an opinion, in my opinion. So it's hard to say which content should and should not. Obviously, you have your obvious ones, you have some of the gray areas, right? So we got to the point where we were hearing people say that they needed this. We had functions saying we need this. We're saying, great, you need to use your budget for it. We can't do it. We don't have that count. So I called up Jeff one day and said, hey, crazy question, but can we do some translation? And we agreed as an organization to go with an automated approach. We realized, obviously, one of the cons to that is it's not perfect. There are some areas of that could be a little bit off, but at the end of the day, it gives employees the opportunity to decide what they want to translate and not translate. So Jeff was able to get me on a call with some of his team, and we were able to implement the functionality on there that has a click to translate link at the top of our emails now, and it opens up a Google Translate dropdown, and it works great. So that's been something that we've seen a lot of clicks. So I periodically go through some of our larger emails and just see who's clicking on that link. Unfortunately, I can't dive into like which language they're looking at. We can do that on our intranet. We have Drupal for our intranet. But we do have Google Analytics for our intranet and also for Populo. So it's great because it's familiar. I'm sure there are better ways in terms of accuracy, but in terms of when you're mirroring headcount, cost, and the desire for it, that was the best, most logical solution we can come up with. So we implemented it, ran with it. It seems to be working great. So Jeff, kudos to you and your team. I really appreciate all that help. But yeah, that's been a great win for us.
Because you had said the CEO, from the CEO down, it was English was language.
Yep.
I've always read that communication in the native language has a huge impact.
Does.
So that shows that. Before I go to Josh, just mention that you can connect with either of you two if you want to pick this up with them individually through LinkedIn. So you've impacted IC and greater teamwork between IT and IC. Can you give us a few tips and takeaways on these sometimes alien beings that are working together to build a better, how we can build a better relationship with IT, the best way to understand what IT needs in order to present a successful business case for bringing in new technology?
Yeah, it's still an uphill climb. Let's just be clear up front. No, I mean, really, I think that the biggest thing that has helped me do that is actually being able to understand both sides and play that translator. But what I've started to do, and I think would be helpful for everybody, is to really try to understand IT in a way by asking them. Just say, hey, explain that in plain English, please. All I'm hearing is just blah, 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 blah. I have no idea what you're talking about, right? Become strategic partners with them, become collaborators. The same way that I know none of us want to be just an order taker, neither do they. They would love to actually, most of the time anyway, in my experience, would love to actually sit in and collaborate on ideas, help come up with solutions instead of just being told, this is what I want, go make it happen. They need to understand what you're trying to do, right? And the more that you collaborate, the more that you sit and talk with them, the more that you explain the why behind the project that you're trying to do, they can probably even help come up with even better ideas than what you had to start with. The second thing I would say is whenever you go to IT with any type of a project, ask them to take their IT hat off. Think of it like an employee. What's in it for them if we can work together and make this happen? That tends to open up the conversation a lot more they better understand what you're going for and why, and you can better understand their needs, what it is that they're going to need to make the project work. And coming up with what that is going to be different with every single project. So it's very important to try and make it as collaborative of a process as you can.
Tell me a campaign that you're particularly proud of and why, and how you measured the success, why you think it worked.
Yeah, we talk about analytics a lot. I think one thing is it's hard to measure is just seeing how employees start to implement things after you roll out a process, for example. I think one that comes to mind is our company late last year rolled out 4 core competencies. I know a lot of organizations have core competencies. We did not. So we incorporated that, but obviously we looked at click rates. We looked at, we created a robust communications plan. We did the whole bag of tricks that you would normally do. But I think what I was looking for is, from a measurement standpoint, is how are employees starting to incorporate this into how they speak and how they, socialize. So on our intranet, we have a little section called the Social Hub, where employees, kind of like Yammer, kind of like those type of areas, where employees can go in and post blogs. You can comment, that type of thing. And we're starting to see trends of people starting to incorporate that into their language, but not just as like jargon or buzzwords, but actually kind of defining them in terms of examples as how they've embodied the company's core values. I know we talked about today core values quite a bit, and I think when you have leadership talking about these things, how do you relate those to employees? But more importantly, how do you get them to embody them? And when they're created up here, how do you get the buy-in down here? And that was a challenge, and it's something that's still a piece that we're working towards. But I think the measurement is just seeing the culture shift, and that's something that we just have to look at. It's not sexy. It's not something you can look at numbers and just figure it out. But I think that is a primary way that I think it's a fun kind of way to do analytics, kind of taking yourself away from the numbers a little bit.
Same question.
I think really the one that I'm most proud of is definitely the acquisition, the merger day one. Our measurement on that one was more so getting people to register. So we had the whole campaign really in order to make this happen. The 2 new companies that were coming on had to actually go to a secure site, put in information, and register with their new usernames and passwords and all that good stuff to actually get onto the network. And so that was the big measurement right there was did we make that happen? And that started, it was a 3-day campaign, and we did manage to get 98% registered for that day one deadline that we were going for. The other 2% didn't register for probably another month, so I don't think we ever could have gotten them if we wanted to.
Before I open the floor, Eric's been mentioning, we're going to ask everybody to put up a takeaway, just see what's coming up, because everyone takes away something different. What would you say a top takeaway today?
From the conference in general, for me, or just from me to give to everyone else? How about both?
No.
I'm
thinking from the day.
So, from the day, I mean, great speakers today. Overall, just great insight. I really liked the acting piece. I thought that was very intriguing to me, because I think it's important to understand. And we talk about know your audience as communicators, but I think it's a little deeper than that, right? So when you're talking about who are you meeting with, who you have to strategize with, I think incorporating that mindset and being quick on your feet to understand that is crucial. So that's a big takeaway for me. I guess my parting words would be just, hey, with Populo, this being the theme for the conference, utilize them as a resource. I've had great experience just picking up the phone and throwing out a crazy idea and seeing if it sticks, and they'll entertain it. Honestly, that's been my experience. They'll at least consider it. They'll see if it's something that's on their plans already or something they can incorporate down the road. So I think utilize them as a resource, but also run ideas off through them. I think they welcome that. It's been my experience. So I know I've talked to a lot of folks today that just started working with Populo. Take that as advice. I really, really recommend it.
And I just before we get
I would
to
agree.
I want to say takeaway, but I just want to mention Glenn Turpin from First Data is going to be speaking as well, and there's a great story in there about data. So, Josh,
I was actually going to say I agree with you on the Populo thing.
either way.
On Populo and being able to just call and throw ideas and see, will this even work, right? The whole team's been great about that. So
That's great to hear.